The most influential of these, Einstein later said, was the Scottish empiricist David Hume, 1711 to 1776. In the tradition of Locke and Berkeley, Hume was skeptical about any knowledge other than what could be directly perceived by the senses. Even the apparent laws of causality were suspect to him, mere habits of the mind. A ball hitting another may behave the way that Newton's laws predict time after time after time. Yet that was not, strictly speaking, a reason to believe that it would happen that way the next time. Hume saw clearly that certain concepts, for example that of causality, cannot be deduced from our perceptions of experience by logical methods, Einstein noted. Hume's empiricism was carried a step further by Ernst Mach, 1838 to 1916, the Austrian physicist and philosopher whose writings Einstein read at the urging of Michele Besso. He became one of the favorite authors of the Olympia Academy, and he helped to instill in Einstein the skepticism about received wisdom and accepted conventions that would become a hallmark of his creativity. Einstein would later proclaim, in words that could be used about himself as well, that Mach's genius was partly due to his incorruptible skepticism and independence. The essence of Mach's philosophy was this, in Einstein's words: concepts have meaning only if we can point to objects to which they refer, and to the rules by which they are assigned to these objects. In other words, for a concept to make sense, you need an operational definition of it, one that describes how you would observe the concept in operation. This would bear fruit for Einstein when, a few years later, he and Besso would talk about what observation would give meaning to the apparently simple concept that two events happened simultaneously. The most influential thing that Mach did for Einstein was to apply this approach to Newton's concepts of absolute time and absolute space. It was impossible to define these concepts, Mach asserted, in terms of observations you could make. Therefore, they were meaningless. Mach ridiculed Newton's conceptual monstrosity of absolute space. He called it purely a thought thing which cannot be pointed to in experience. The final intellectual hero of the Olympia Academy was Baruch Spinoza, 1632 to 1677, the Jewish philosopher from Amsterdam. His influence was primarily religious. Einstein embraced his concept of an amorphous God, reflected in the awe-inspiring beauty, rationality, and unity of nature's laws. But like Spinoza, Einstein did not believe in a personal God who rewarded and punished and intervened in our daily lives. In addition, Einstein drew from Spinoza a faith in determinism, a sense that the laws of nature, once we could fathom them, decreed immutable causes and effects, and that God did not play dice by allowing any events to be random or undetermined. All things are determined by the necessity of divine nature, Spinoza declared. And even when quantum mechanics seemed to show that was wrong, Einstein steadfastly believed it was right. Marrying Mileva. Hermann Einstein was not destined to see his son become anything more successful than a third-class patent examiner. In October 1902, when Hermann's health began to decline, Einstein traveled to Milan to be with him at the end. Their relationship had long been a mix of alienation and affection, and it concluded on that note as well. When the end came, Einstein's assistant Helen Dukas later said, Hermann asked all of them to leave the room so he could die on his own. Einstein later called his father's death the deepest shock he had ever experienced. The event did, however, solve one important issue. On his deathbed, Hermann Einstein gave his permission, finally, for his son to marry Mileva Maric. Einstein's Olympia Academy colleagues, Maurice Solavine and Conrad Habicht, convened a special session on January 6, 1903, to serve as witnesses at the tiny civil ceremony in the Bern Registrar's office where Albert Einstein married Mileva Maric. No family members, not Einstein's mother or sister nor Maric's parents, came to Bern. The tight group of intellectual comrades celebrated together at a restaurant that evening, and then Einstein and Maric went back to his apartment together. Not surprisingly, he had forgotten his key and had to wake his landlady. "Well, now I am a married man, and I am living a very pleasant, cozy life with my wife," he reported to Michele Besso 2 weeks later. "She takes excellent care of everything, cooks well, and is always cheerful." For her part, Marich reported to her own best friend, "I am even closer to my sweetheart, if it is at all possible, than I was in our Zurich days." Occasionally she would attend sessions of the Olympia Academy, but mainly as an observer. Mileva, intelligent and reserved, listened intently but never intervened in our discussions, Solovine recalled. Nevertheless, clouds began to form. "My new duties are taking their toll," Marich said of her housekeeping chores and role as a mere onlooker when science was discussed. Einstein's friends felt that she was becoming even more gloomy. At times she seemed laconic and distrustful as well, and Einstein, at least so he claimed in retrospect, had already become wary. He had felt an inner resistance to marrying Marich, he later claimed, but had overcome it out of a sense of duty. A few months into their marriage, in August 1903, the secret cloud hovering over their lives suddenly cast a new pall. Marich received word that Lieserl, then 19 months old, had come down with scarlet fever. She boarded a train for Novi Sad. Apparently, the child was given up for adoption. The only clue we have is a cryptic letter Einstein wrote Marich in September after she had been in Novi Sad for a month. "I'm very sorry about what happened with Lieserl. Scarlet fever often leaves some lasting trace behind. If only everything passes well. How is Lieserl registered? We must take great care, lest difficulties arise for the child in the future." Whatever the motivation Einstein may have had for asking the question, neither Lieserl's registration documents nor any other paper trace of her existence is known to have survived. All evidence about Einstein's daughter was carefully erased. Almost every one of the letters between Einstein and Marich in the summer and fall of 1902, many of which presumably dealt with Lieserl, were destroyed. Those between Marich and her friend Helena Savic during that period were intentionally burned by Savic's family. For the rest of their lives, even after they divorced, Einstein and his wife did all they could, with surprising success, to cover up not only the fate of their first child, but her very existence. Whatever happened to Lieserl added to Marich's gloom. Shortly after Einstein died, a writer named Peter Michaelmore, who knew nothing of Lieserl, published a book that was based in part on conversations with Einstein's son, Hans Albert Einstein. Referring to the year right after their marriage, Michaelmore noted, "Something had happened between the two, but Mileva would say only that it was intensely personal. Whatever it was, she brooded about it, and Albert seemed to be in some ways responsible. Friends encouraged Mileva to talk about her problem and get it out in the open. She insisted that it was too personal, and kept it a secret all her life, a vital detail in the story of Albert Einstein that still remains shrouded in mystery." Soon, Mileva discovered she was pregnant again, and she worried that this would anger her husband. But Einstein expressed happiness on hearing the news that there would soon be a replacement for their daughter. "I'm not the least bit angry that poor Dolly is hatching a new chick," he wrote. "In fact, I'm happy about it, and had already given some thought to whether I shouldn't see to it that you get a new Lieserl. After all, you shouldn't be denied that which is the right of all women." Hans Albert Einstein was born on May 14, 1904. The new child lifted Marich's spirits and restored some joy to her marriage, or so at least she told her friend Helena Savic. "Hop over to Bern so I can see you again, and I can show you my dear little sweetheart, who is also named Albert. I cannot tell you how much joy he gives me when he laughs so cheerfully on waking up or when he kicks his legs while taking a bath." Einstein was behaving with fatherly dignity, Marich noted, and he spent time making little toys for his baby son, such as a cable car he constructed from matchboxes and string. "That was one of the nicest toys I had at the time, and it worked," Hans Albert could still recall when he was an adult. Out of little string and matchboxes and so on, he could make the most beautiful things. The Miracle Year. Quanta and Molecules. 1905. Turn of the century. There is nothing new to be discovered in physics now, the revered Lord Kelvin reportedly told the British Association for the Advancement of Science in 1900. All that remains is more and more precise measurement. He was wrong. The foundations of classical physics had been laid by Isaac Newton, 1642 to 1727, in the late 17th century. Building on the discoveries of Galileo and others, he developed laws that described a very comprehensible mechanical universe. A falling apple and an orbiting moon were governed by the same rules of gravity, mass, force, and motion. Causes produced effects, forces acted upon objects, and in theory everything could be explained, determined, and predicted. Einstein admired this strict causality, calling it the profoundest characteristic of Newton's teaching. In the mid-1800s, Newtonian mechanics was joined by another great advance. The English experimenter Michael Faraday, 1791 to 1867, the self-taught son of a blacksmith, discovered the properties of electrical and magnetic fields. He showed that an electric current produced magnetism, and then he showed that a changing magnetic field could produce an electric current. When a magnet is moved near a wire loop, or vice versa, an electric current is produced. Faraday's work on electromagnetic induction permitted inventive entrepreneurs like Einstein's father and uncle to create new ways of combining spinning wire coils and moving magnets to build electricity generators. As a result, young Albert Einstein had a profound physical feel for Faraday's fields, and not just a theoretical understanding of them. The bushy-bearded Scottish physicist James Clerk Maxwell, 1831 to 1879, subsequently devised wonderful equations that specified, among other things, how changing electric fields create magnetic fields, and how changing magnetic fields create electrical ones. A changing electric field could, in fact, produce a changing magnetic field that could, in turn, produce a changing electric field, and so on. The result of this coupling was an electromagnetic wave.